She was 7 months pregnant when her husband pushed her down an elevator shaft, 40 feet of darkness, 40 feet between life and death. Preston Sterling watched his wife fall. Then he walked away, left her bleeding in the dark for 6 hours, went home, slept in their bed, planned his alibi. He thought she would disappear, just like the 5 women before her. But Genevieve survived. And her father, a former federal prosecutor with 30 years of experience destroying powerful men, he didn't call the police. He didn't hire lawyers. He did something far worse. He dismantled the entire Sterling empire, piece by piece, secret by secret, until there was nothing left but ashes and prison cells. This is not just a story about betrayal. This is a story about a woman who fell into darkness and climbed out holding her daughter in her arms. This is her story. The elevator doors opened to nothing but darkness and a 40-foot drop. Genevieve Sterling stood at the threshold, her hand resting on her swollen belly. 7 months pregnant. The baby kicked against her palm as if sensing the danger her mother had not yet recognized. Behind her, Preston's breathing was steady. Too steady. The kind of calm that comes before violence. "I found the test results," Vivi said without turning around. "The prenatal paternity test. You had it done without telling me." The penthouse was silent except for the distant hum of Manhattan traffic 63 floors below. Sterling Tower, his family's monument to 4 generations of wealth and power. Tonight it felt like a tomb. "Sweetheart," Preston said. The word dripped with condescension. "You're overreacting." "Am I?" She finally turned to face him. Her husband of 3 years, the man she had loved with everything she had, the man who had secretly tested whether the baby she carried was truly his. "Why would you need a paternity test, Preston? If you trusted me?" His jaw tightened, just slightly. Most people would have missed it. But Vivi had learned to read the micro-expressions, the tells, the small betrayals of his carefully constructed mask. "The results came back positive," she continued. "This baby is yours, but you already knew that. So why did you need proof?" Preston stepped closer. His Italian leather shoes clicked against the marble floor. "You've been spending a lot of time with your trainer. People talk." "People," Vivi laughed bitterly. "You mean your mother? Margot has been whispering poison in your ear since the day we met." "Don't bring my mother into this. She's been in this from the beginning. She never wanted you to marry me. I wasn't good enough for the Sterling legacy." Vivi's voice cracked. "But I loved you anyway. I gave you everything. And this is what I get? Secret DNA tests? Accusations?" Preston's hand shot out and grabbed her wrist. His grip was iron. His eyes were ice. "You need to calm down," he said. "The pregnancy hormones are making you irrational." There it was. The dismissal. The gaslighting. The pattern she had ignored for too long. "Let go of me." "Vivi, listen to me carefully." His voice dropped to a whisper. "You're going to forget you found that test. You're going to go back to being the perfect Sterling wife, and you're never going to question me again." She wrenched her arm free. "Or what?" Preston smiled. It was the coldest thing she had ever seen. "Goodbye, sweetheart." His hand connected with her back, right between her shoulder blades. The same spot where he had placed his palm on their wedding day, guiding her down the aisle. Now it pushed her into the void. Time fractured. Vivi felt herself falling. The darkness of the elevator shaft swallowed her whole. Wind rushed past her ears, her arms pinwheeled, her mouth opened in a scream that seemed to stretch across eternity. The baby. Save the baby. Instinct took over. She twisted her body midair, curling around her belly like a shell protecting its pearl. If she was going to die, she would die shielding her daughter. Impact. But not the bottom. Her body slammed into something metal. A maintenance platform, 12 feet down, not 40. The blow shattered her left arm and cracked 3 ribs. Pain exploded through every nerve. But she was alive. The baby was alive. Above her, a face appeared in the elevator doorway. Preston, illuminated by the glow of his phone screen. He looked down at her crumpled body, watched, waited. Then he turned and walked away. The last thing Vivi saw before the darkness claimed her was the ceiling of the elevator shaft, concrete and steel and shadows. and somewhere far above, the click of her husband's footsteps retreating across the marble floor. She was going to die here. Alone. In the dark. No, not alone, huss. Her hand found her belly. The baby kicked. Fight, Vivi whispered. We're going to fight. Then everything went black. The hospital room was white. Too white. The kind of sterile brightness that belonged in nightmares. Genevieve's eyes fluttered open. Machines beeped in steady rhythm. An IV dripped clear fluid into her arm. The smell of antiseptic burned her nostrils. Where am I? What happened? Then it came rushing back. The elevator, the push, the fall. Her hands shot to her belly before her eyes could focus. The instinct that had saved them both was still there, still protecting. The baby? Her voice was a ragged whisper. A face swam into view. Gray hair, tired eyes, a jaw set like granite. Her father. Dad? Raymond Ashford leaned forward in his chair. He took her hand in both of his. His palms were warm, but his grip was trembling. Fighting, he said, like her mother. The doctors say she's a miracle. Both of you are. Tears spilled down Vivi's cheeks. Hot, uncontrollable. The relief was overwhelming. Her daughter was alive. Her baby was still inside her, still growing, still fighting. Preston, she managed to say, he pushed me. Dad, he tried to kill me. Raymond's expression didn't change, but something shifted behind his eyes. A darkness that Vivi had seen before. The same look he had worn during his 30 years as a federal prosecutor. The face he showed to murderers and monsters before he destroyed their lives with evidence and truth. I know, he said quietly. The maintenance worker found you. Security footage shows Preston leaving the penthouse at 11:52, alone. He told the doorman you were taking a bath and wanted to be left undisturbed. Vivi closed her eyes. The betrayal was complete. Not just the push, not just the attempted murder, but the calculated aftermath, the alibi, the plan to make her disappear. How long was I down there? 6 hours. You almost bled out. The doctors had to operate twice. Your arm is held together with titanium pins, 3 broken ribs, internal bleeding. But the baby, Raymond's voice cracked, just slightly. The baby is perfect. You protected her with your body. The doctors said they've never seen anything like it. 6 hours. She had lain in that elevator shaft for 6 hours while her husband went home and slept in their bed. Dad, what do we do? Raymond stood. He walked to the window. Outside, the sun was rising over the city. A new day, a new beginning. Tell me everything again, he said without turning around. Start from the moment you met Preston Sterling. Don't leave anything out. I need to know every detail, every conversation, every strange moment you dismissed or explained away. Why? Now he turned. His eyes were cold, focused, calculating. Because I'm going to destroy him, Genevieve. Not just arrest him, not just prosecute him. I'm going to dismantle everything the Sterling family has built for 4 generations. And when I'm done, the name Preston Sterling will be synonymous with monster. Vivi stared at her father, the man who had taught her right from wrong, the man who had devoted his life to justice, the man who had never once used his power for personal vengeance. Until now. Where do I start? She asked. Raymond pulled his chair closer to her bed. He took out a small notebook, the same kind he had used during 3 decades of federal investigations. The beginning, he said. Tell me about the night you met Preston Sterling, and don't spare any detail. I need to know the man I'm about to bury. The charity gala had been her mother's idea. $200 a plate, crystal chandeliers, women in designer gowns, men in tuxedos that cost more than most people's cars. Vivi had hated every minute of it. 3 years ago, she was 29, working as a legal researcher at a nonprofit, daughter of the famous prosecutor Raymond Ashford, but determined to make her own path, her own name. You look like you'd rather be anywhere else, a voice said behind her. She turned. The man was tall, handsome in that practiced way of people who had been admired their entire lives. Dark hair, blue eyes, a smile that seemed designed to disarm. Is it that obvious? Vivi asked. Only to someone who feels the same way. He extended his hand. Preston Sterling. She knew the name. Everyone knew the name. Sterling Corp. Real estate. Finance. a family fortune that had survived 2 world wars and countless economic crashes. Genevieve Ashford, she said, shaking his hand. Raymond Ashford's daughter. Preston nodded. Your father put 3 of my family's business associates in prison. Vivi tensed. If they were guilty, they deserved it. Preston laughed. It sounded genuine. I'm not complaining. They were guilty. Your father just had the courage to prove it when no one else would. He tilted his head. You're the first woman tonight who's looked genuinely bored at one of my family's events. I think I'm in love. She should have recognized the warning signs. The charm that felt rehearsed, the compliments that came too easily, the way he made her feel like the only person in the room while simultaneously watching everyone else. But she was lonely and tired, and so desperate for someone who saw her as more than Raymond Ashford's daughter. Buy me a drink that doesn't cost $200, she said, and maybe I'll let you tell me more about yourself. Preston smiled. Done. That night, they left the gala together. He took her to a hole-in-the-wall diner in Brooklyn. They ate pancakes at midnight and talked until sunrise. He told her about the pressure of being a sterling heir, the expectations, the loneliness of growing up with money but no real connections. She believed every word. Sure. He was different back then, Vivi said from her hospital bed. Or I thought he was. Looking back, I can see the manipulation, but at the time it felt like fate. Raymond wrote in his notebook. His face revealed nothing. When did things change? Vivi closed her eyes. The memories were painful now, tainted by the truth of what Preston really was. After the wedding, small things at first, he didn't like my friends, said they were jealous of my new lifestyle. He thought I spent too much time with my family, said your work made him uncomfortable. She paused. I made excuses. I told myself he was just protective, that he loved me so much he wanted me all to himself. Classic isolation tactics, Raymond said. Textbook abuser behavior. The word hit Vivi like a slap. Abuser. She had never let herself think it before. Preston never hit her, never screamed. His cruelty was subtle, surgical, the kind that made you question your own reality. There's more, she said. About 6 months into the marriage, I overheard a phone call. Preston was talking to someone about a settlement, something about a girl from his college days. I asked him about it afterward. He said it was a business matter. Nothing important. Raymond's pen stopped moving. What was the girl's name? I don't know. He changed the subject, got angry that I was eavesdropping. I never brought it up again. We'll find out. Raymond set down his notebook. Genevieve, I need you to understand something. What Preston did to you wasn't random. It wasn't a moment of rage. He planned it. The paternity test, the timing, the location. He chose that elevator shaft because he knew about the drop. He knew what would happen when he pushed you. Vivi's stomach turned. You're saying he's done this before. I'm saying we need to find out. Raymond stood. I have contacts, people who owe me favors. I'm going to start digging into Preston's past, every relationship, every business deal, every suspicious death or accident connected to anyone he's ever known. Dad, Vivi reached for his hand. Be careful. The Sterlings have power, money, influence. If they find out what you're doing. Raymond squeezed her fingers gently. I spent 30 years putting powerful men in prison, he said. Men with money, men with connections, men who thought they were untouchable. His voice dropped to a whisper. Preston Sterling just tried to murder my daughter and my grandchild. There is no force on this earth that will stop me from making him pay. The door to Vivi's hospital room opened. A woman entered, silver hair, cold eyes, a Chanel suit that probably cost more than the hospital's monthly electric bill. Margot Sterling. Raymond, Margot's voice was clipped. I heard about the accident. Terrible thing. My son is devastated. Raymond didn't move from his position by the window. Is that what he's calling it? An accident? What else would he call it? Margot's gaze flicked to Vivi. The poor dear must have tripped. Those elevator platforms can be so dangerous. We've already contacted our legal team about suing the building maintenance company. Vivi felt sick. She watched her mother-in-law spin the narrative in real time, reshaping reality to protect her precious son. Get out, Vivi said. Margot's eyebrows rose. Excuse me? I said get out. I know what Preston did. I know what you've been covering up for years. And if you think for 1 second that I'm going to play along with your lies, you don't know me at all. The mask slipped. Just for a moment, Vivi saw the real Margot Sterling underneath. The cunning, the cruelty, the absolute certainty that she was above the law. Genevieve, dear, the pregnancy hormones have clearly affected your judgment. I suggest you take some time to rest before making any accusations you'll regret. Raymond stepped between them. Margot, he said softly, surely we can discuss this like civilized people. The older woman nodded. Of course, that's all I've ever wanted. Raymond's smile didn't reach his eyes. I spent 30 years putting civilized people in federal prison. Your son just attempted to murder my daughter and grandchild. He leaned closer. Civilized ended the moment she hit that platform. Margot's face went pale. She looked from Raymond to Vivi and back again. You're making a mistake, she said. The Sterling family has resources you can't imagine. If you pursue this, you'll destroy yourself. I appreciate the warning. Raymond opened the hospital room door. Now get out, before I have security escort you. Margot gathered what remained of her dignity. She walked to the door, pausing at the threshold. This isn't over, she said. No, Raymond replied. It's just beginning. The door closed behind her. The room was silent except for the beeping of Vivi's heart monitor. Dad, she said, what happens now? Raymond pulled out his phone. He dialed a number from memory. Marcus, it's Raymond Ashford. I need everything on Sterling Corp. Every subsidiary, every offshore account, every skeleton. He paused. And Marcus, I need it yesterday. He hung up. Now, he said to his daughter, we go to war. The laptop screen glowed in the dim hospital room. Bridget Kincaid sat at Vivi's bedside, her face pale beneath her carefully applied makeup. Vivi, she said slowly, I need to show you something, and you're going to want to throw this laptop across the room. 2 days had passed since the fall. Vivi was stable now. The baby was thriving despite everything, but sleep refused to come. Every time she closed her eyes, she felt herself falling into the dark. What is it? Bridget turned the screen toward her. Search results, obituaries, news articles from years ago. I've been doing some research, Bridget said, on Preston, on his past, and Vivi, you weren't his first. The words didn't make sense at first. First what? First wife, first victim? Then Vivi started reading. Chelsea Morrison, age 21, Preston's college girlfriend at Harvard, fell from a fourth-floor balcony during a party in 2004, ruled a suicide despite no history of depression. No note, no warning signs. Diana Reeves, age 26, Preston's first fiancée, died in a single-car accident in 2009, lost control on a mountain road. No witnesses, no other vehicles involved. The engagement had been called off 2 weeks earlier. Sarah Crawford, age 28, a junior executive at Sterling Corp., found dead in her apartment in 2014. Official cause, accidental overdose. Friends said she had never used drugs in her life. 3 women, 3 deaths, all connected to Preston Sterling. Vivi's hands began to shake. This can't be real, she whispered. This can't be happening. There's more. Bridget's voice was barely audible. I found a payment record. $200,000 wired to Chelsea Morrison's family 3 months after her death. The same amount to Diana Reeves' parents. The same to Sarah Crawford's sister. All from the same offshore account. All routed through Sterling Corp's subsidiaries. Hush money. The Sterlings had paid off the families of dead women. They knew, Vivi said. His parents knew what he was, and they covered it up. The room spun. All those years, all those smiles, all those family dinners where Margot Sterling looked at her with barely concealed contempt. They had known their son was a murderer, and they had let Vivi walk right into his web. I was braver than the others, Vivi murmured. What? At my wedding, Margot whispered something to me. She said I was braver than the others. Vivi laughed bitterly. I thought she meant brave enough to marry into the family spotlight, to handle the pressure of being a Sterling. Bridget reached for her hand. Vivi, she meant brave enough to survive, or stupid enough to think I could. The memory flooded back. Her wedding day, the white dress, the flowers, Preston waiting at the altar with that perfect smile. She had been so happy, so certain she had found her forever. But the signs had been there all along. The way Preston watched other women when he thought she wasn't looking. Not with desire, with calculation, like a predator sizing up prey. The casual comments about his exes, how they had been unstable, how they had overreacted, how he was lucky to have escaped. The times he grabbed her wrist just a little too hard during arguments, always apologizing afterward, always blaming stress or work or family pressure. She had explained it all away, made excuses, told herself that love required compromise, that marriage meant accepting someone's flaws. But these weren't flaws. These were patterns, and she had been too blind to see them. I wasn't stupid, Vivi said suddenly. Bridget looked up. What? All those times I felt crazy for doubting him, for feeling afraid, for noticing the micro-expressions that didn't match his words. Vivi's voice grew stronger. I wasn't stupid. I wasn't irrational. I was deceived by someone who had spent his entire life perfecting deception. So, Raymond Ashford sat across from Marcus Holloway in a small office downtown. The private investigator was former FBI, 15 years of service before going private. He and Raymond had worked together on a dozen federal cases. How many? Raymond asked. His voice was steady, his hands were not. Marcus slid a folder across the desk. That we know of? 5. Chelsea Morrison in 04, Diana Reeves in 09, Sarah Crawford in 14. There are 2 more, Catherine Wells in 2011 and Rebecca Palmer in 2017. 5 women, 5 deaths spanning 13 years. Your daughter would have been 6, Marcus added quietly. Raymond opened the folder. Photos, police reports, coroner findings, a paper trail of tragedy stretching back 2 decades. The Sterling family has been covering up their son's tendencies since he was 19 years old, Marcus said. The first girl, Chelsea Morrison, was 17. Preston was a sophomore. The family claimed it was hazing gone wrong, paid off the university, paid off the local police, made it all disappear. How did they keep it hidden for so long? Money, influence, fear. Marcus shrugged. The Sterling name opens doors. It also closes mouths. Anyone who gets too close to the truth gets a visit from their lawyers. Or worse. Raymond studied the photos. 5 young women, 5 lives cut short, 5 families destroyed by grief and silenced by money. What about physical evidence? Gone, destroyed, lost. Marcus leaned forward. But there's one thing they couldn't erase. The payments. Every time Preston Sterling killed a woman, his family wired $200,000 to the victim's relatives. Same amount, same timing, same offshore account. Can you trace it? Already did. Marcus pulled out another document. The account belongs to a shell company in the Caymans. The shell company is owned by another shell company in Delaware. That one is owned by a trust administered by Franklin Pierce, the Sterling family attorney, the same man who's been cleaning up Preston's messes for 20 years. Raymond closed the folder. His mind was already working, building the case, connecting the dots, finding the weakness in the Sterling armor. What do you need from me? He asked. Access, Marcus said. The Sterling family has insulated themselves behind layers of lawyers and money. But there's always someone who says, someone who saw something, someone who's been waiting for a chance to talk. Find them. I will. Marcus paused. Raymond, there's something else. Preston's pattern. It's accelerating. Chelsea Morrison in 04. Diana Reeves in 09. That's 5 years between victims. But Catherine Wells was only 2 years after Diana, and Rebecca Palmer was only 3 years after Sarah Crawford. He's losing control, or getting more confident. Either way, your daughter interrupted something. The pregnancy, the paternity test, something spooked him, made him act faster than usual. Raymond thought about Vivi lying in that hospital bed. The broken bones, the internal bleeding, the baby fighting to survive. He won't get another chance, Raymond said. I'm going to make sure of that. That night, Vivi sat alone in her hospital room. The lights were dim, the machines hummed. Outside, the city glittered with a million lights, oblivious to the darkness she had discovered. She found herself braiding her hair, a childhood habit. Her mother used to do this when she was scared. Now she did it herself, over and under, over and under. The repetitive motion calmed her racing thoughts. 5 women, 5 deaths, 5 families destroyed. And she had almost been number 6. The baby kicked. Vivi placed her hand on her belly and felt the tiny life inside her, fighting to exist in a world that had tried to end her before she even began. "I'm going to protect you," Vivi whispered. "No matter what it takes, I'm going to protect you from him, from his family, from everything." The room was silent except for the beeping monitors, but in that silence, Vivi made a decision. She would not be a victim. She would not hide. She would not let Preston Sterling's name be the end of her story. It would be the beginning of his destruction. The corner office of Sterling Corp occupied the entire 52nd floor. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of Manhattan, a testament to 4 generations of wealth, a monument to power. Preston Sterling sat behind his mahogany desk, his left arm in a sling, a prop, a piece of theater designed to support his story about trying to catch his falling wife. Franklin Pierce paced before him. The family attorney was sweating. His expensive suit was rumpled. His usual pompous demeanor had crumbled into something approaching panic. "The police are asking questions," Pierce said. "Your mother is managing the situation, but Raymond Ashford isn't a man who can be managed. My father-in-law is a retired prosecutor." Preston's voice was calm, almost bored. "He has no jurisdiction, no authority, no power. He has contacts. 30 years of contacts in federal law enforcement. The FBI, the DOJ, the IRS. Pierce stopped pacing. "And he has motive. You pushed his pregnant daughter down an elevator shaft." "Allegedly." "Preston, I've been cleaning up your messes since you were 19 years old. Chelsea Morrison, Diana Reeves, all the others. I've made every problem disappear. But this is different. Genevieve survived. She's talking. And her father has the resources to make people listen." Preston stood and walked to the window. The city spread out below him like a kingdom waiting to be conquered. "Then we'll bury him," Preston said, "like we bury everyone." Chair. Raymond's home office had transformed into a war room, 3 walls covered with documents, photos, timelines, a web of connections linking Preston Sterling to 2 decades of violence. Teddy Ashford sat at the computer, his fingers flying across the keyboard. Vivi's younger brother had built his tech company from nothing. He understood money, how it moved, how it hid. "Dad," Teddy said, "I found something." Raymond crossed the room. "What?" "The payments, $200,000 before each death. I traced them through 17 shell companies." Teddy pointed at the screen. "They all lead back to the same account in the Caymans. But here's the thing. The wire transfers happened 3 days before each victim died. Every single time. He was paying in advance." "For what?" Raymond studied the pattern. 3 days before Chelsea Morrison fell from that balcony. 3 days before Diana Reeves lost control of her car. 3 days before Sarah Crawford overdosed on drugs she never used. "Cleanup," Raymond said. "He pays someone to handle the aftermath. Make it look like an accident. Destroy evidence. Silence witnesses." "There's more." Teddy pulled up another document. The same account received a deposit 3 days before Vivi's fall, $200,000. The implications were staggering. Preston hadn't just pushed his wife on impulse. He had planned it, budgeted for it, treated her murder as a line item on a spreadsheet. "Can you trace who receives the money?" "Working on it." Teddy rubbed his eyes. "But whoever it is, they're good, really good. This isn't some amateur covering tracks. This is professional-level money laundering." "Keep digging." Raymond picked up his phone. "I have a meeting." "With who?" "Franklin Pierce. He wants to make a deal." The meeting took place at a neutral location, a conference room at a midtown law firm. Neutral ground, witnesses, everything proper and above board. Franklin Pierce sat on one side of the table. Raymond sat on the other. $20 million, Pierce said. Genevieve signs a non-disclosure agreement. No criminal charges, no civil suits, No public statements. The Sterling family makes this all go away. Raymond said nothing. It's a generous offer, Pierce continued. More than generous. Your daughter gets financial security for life. Your grandchild grows up wealthy. Everyone moves on. Franklin, Raymond's voice was quiet. Do you remember the Morrison case? 2008? You represented the family. I prosecuted. Pierce's face went pale. That was different. Was it? Raymond leaned forward. Because I still have those files. Every document, every deposition, every piece of evidence that mysteriously vanished before trial. He paused. I wonder what the Bar Association would think about how you obtained certain testimony. That case was dismissed. On a technicality that you manufactured. Raymond smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. I've been holding on to that information for 16 years, waiting for the right moment. Pierce's hands trembled. What do you want? I want the truth. Every victim, every payment, every person the Sterling family has bribed or threatened or silenced. Raymond stood. You have 48 hours to decide which side of history you want to be on. After that, the choice will no longer be yours to make. Vivi's hospital room had become her sanctuary. The monitors had been removed. She could walk now, carefully with help. The baby was strong, growing, fighting. Her father visited every afternoon. He never told her the details of his investigation. Only that progress was being made. Today, Dr. Nadine Weaver came for her daily checkup. The obstetrician was thorough, professional, but there was warmth in her eyes. The baby is remarkable, Dr. Weaver said. Given everything you've been through, I would have expected complications. But she's measuring perfectly. Strong heartbeat, healthy movement. She paused. She's a survivor, like her mother. Vivi placed her hand on the monitor screen. The ultrasound image was grainy, but she could see the outline of her daughter, the curve of her spine, the tiny fingers, the beating heart. Her name is going to be Ruth, Vivi said, after my grandmother. That's beautiful. She taught my father that justice isn't revenge, it's restoration. Vivi looked at the screen, at the life she had protected with her own body. I want my daughter to grow up knowing that the right thing isn't always the easy thing, but it's always worth fighting for. Dr. Weaver squeezed her hand. She's lucky to have you as her mother. Vivi smiled. For the first time since the fall, it felt genuine. We're lucky to have each other. So, that night, Raymond received a call, a blocked number, a voice he didn't recognize. Mr. Ashford, my name isn't important. What's important is what I know. I'm listening. Preston Sterling has been killing women for 20 years, and someone has been helping him cover it up. Someone very close to him. Who are you? Someone who's tired of looking the other way. A pause. Check the maintenance records for Sterling Tower. The elevator where your daughter fell. It was scheduled for repair 3 days before her accident. The work order was canceled. By Preston himself. The line went dead. Raymond stared at his phone. Another piece of the puzzle. Another thread to pull. He would pull them all, one by one, until the entire tapestry of Sterling lies unraveled at his feet. Margot Sterling's townhouse occupied an entire block on the Upper East Side. 4 stories of old money elegance, marble floors, antique furniture, paintings that belonged to museums. She stood in her private study, phone pressed to her ear. Her voice was ice. The Ashford situation requires the usual solution, she said. Yes, the daughter. Make it look like complications from the fall. She's still recovering, still vulnerable. It would be easy enough to arrange. A pause. I don't care about the pot, just handle it. And Marcus, make sure Raymond Ashford knows what happens to people who threaten this family. She hung up the phone, turned toward the door. Raymond Ashford stood in the doorway. I had that entire conversation recorded, Margot. His voice was calm, almost pleasant. You just ordered a hit on my daughter, on Federal Wire. Margot's face went white. Her composure shattered like fine china. That's impossible. You couldn't have what? Anticipated that you'd try to have Genevieve killed? That you'd use the same methods you've used for 20 years to clean up your son's messes? Raymond took a step into the room. I've been recording every phone call in and out of this house for 3 weeks. Every text message, every email. Your security system has more holes than Swiss cheese. That's illegal. So is conspiracy to commit murder. So is obstruction of justice. So is running a criminal enterprise that has resulted in the deaths of at least 5 women. Raymond smiled. I spent 30 years learning how to build cases against people like you. People who think their money makes them untouchable. You're not untouchable, Margot. You're just the next defendant. You're bluffing. I never bluff. I prosecute. Margot reached for her phone. I'm calling my lawyers. Please do. While you're at it, you might want to call a good criminal defense attorney. Franklin Pierce isn't going to help you. He's too busy trying to save himself. The door burst open. 2 men in FBI jackets entered, badges displayed. Margot Sterling, the first agent said, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder and witness tampering. You have the right to remain silent. Margot's screams echoed through the townhouse as they led her away in handcuffs. Raymond watched from the window as they put her in the car. One down, one to go. The media explosion was immediate and overwhelming. Headlines everywhere. Television, internet, social media. The Sterling name that had commanded respect for 4 generations was now synonymous with scandal. Sterling heir questioned in wife's fall. Former prosecutor uncovers pattern of deaths connected to billionaire family. Sterling matriarch arrested on conspiracy charges. Preston Sterling's face appeared on every screen, his carefully crafted image crumbling in real time. The handsome philanthropist, the charming businessman, the devoted husband. All lies. Vivi watched the news from her hospital bed, a bowl of lime jello in her hand. The same jello she had craved throughout her pregnancy. Preston always mocked the craving, called it childish, common. Now she savored every bite. Bridget sat beside her, scrolling through her phone. Your father is trending on Twitter. The hashtag Justice for Sterling Victims has been viewed 50 million times. Good. There's also a GoFundMe for the families of Preston's other victims. It's already raised $2 million. Vivi set down her spoon. Those families, Chelsea Morrison's parents, Diana Reeves's mother, they've been suffering in silence for years, decades, accepting money to keep quiet, living with the knowledge that their daughters were murdered and no one would believe them. Your father believed them. My father didn't even know they existed until last week. Vivi shook her head. I should have seen it. All those red flags I ignored. All those strange comments Preston made about his exes. All those times I felt unsafe and told myself I was overreacting. Bridget took her hand. You survived. That's what matters. I almost didn't. Vivi looked at the television. Preston's face filled the screen, so handsome, so confident, so utterly empty behind those blue eyes. He's going to try to spin this. Make himself the victim. Blame me, blame my father, blame anyone except himself. Let him try. Bridget squeezed her fingers. The truth is out now, and your father is just getting started. 24 hours later, the FBI raided Sterling Corps headquarters. Agents swarmed through the 52nd floor, seized computers, confiscated files, interviewed employees who had spent years pretending not to notice their CEO's darker tendencies. The forensic accountants found everything: 20 years of payments to victim families, bribes to local police departments, donations to politicians who blocked investigations, a systematic enterprise designed to enable a killer. Raymond watched the raid from across the street. Marcus Holloway stood beside him. We've got enough to charge Preston with racketeering, Marcus said, money laundering, obstruction of justice, wire fraud. Even without the murder charges, he's looking at 30 years minimum. The murder charges will come. The evidence is circumstantial. No witnesses, no physical proof. Defense attorneys will tear it apart. Raymond turned to face him. There's a witness, my daughter. She felt his hand on her back. She heard him say goodbye. She saw his face watching her fall. Her word against his. Not anymore. Raymond pulled out his phone, showed Marcus the screen. The maintenance platform where Genevieve landed had a security camera, damaged in the fall but recoverable. IT specialists retrieved the footage this morning. Marcus stared at the image, the elevator shaft, the falling body, and above it, clearly visible, Preston Sterling watching his wife plummet toward what he believed was her death. "That's enough," Marcus whispered. "That's everything." Raymond pocketed the phone. "Preston Sterling is going to prison for the rest of his life, and I'm going to make sure he knows exactly who put him there." The interrogation room at the federal building was deliberately ugly. Gray walls, harsh lighting, a metal table bolted to the floor. Celeste Vaughn sat across from Detective Holloway. Her mascara was smeared from crying. Her hands shook as she clutched a paper cup of cold coffee. "He told me she was abusive," Celeste said, "that she trapped him with the pregnancy, that she was mentally unstable. I believed him." Her voice cracked. "I believed everything." Holloway remained silent. Let her talk. "I met Preston at a company retreat 2 years ago. He was so charming, so attentive. He made me feel special, important." She laughed bitterly. "Looking back, I can see the manipulation, the love bombing, the way he isolated me from my friends, my family. But at the time, it felt like love." "When did you start suspecting something was wrong?" "About 6 months ago, Preston started acting strange, paranoid. He kept checking Genevieve's phone, tracking her location. He said he thought she was having an affair." Celeste shook her head. "I think he was looking for an excuse, a reason to... A reason to what?" She took a deep breath. "A reason to do what he did to the others." Holloway's expression didn't change, but his grip on his pen tightened. "What do you know about the others?" Celeste reached into her purse, pulled out a USB drive, slid it across the table. "He kept records," she said, "of all of them. Photos, videos, personal information. He called it his insurance." Her eyes filled with fresh tears. "I found it on his computer last week. After what happened to Genevieve, I realized I had been sleeping with a monster." Holloway took the USB drive carefully. "Why are you coming forward now?" "Because I could have been next." Celeste met his gaze. "I saw the pattern, the way he talked about his exes, the way he'd get cold sometimes. Empty, like there was nothing human behind his eyes." She shuddered. "I was in love with a serial killer, and I never even knew it." The safe house was located in an unremarkable suburb of New Jersey, a modest split level on a quiet street, armed guards at every entrance. Vivi had been moved here 3 days ago, away from the hospital, away from the media, away from anyone who might try to finish what Preston started. It was past midnight. She couldn't sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the elevator shaft, felt the hand on her back, heard his voice. "Goodbye, sweetheart." She walked to the window. Her hand rested on her belly. The baby kicked, strong, insistent, demanding. "I know," Vivi whispered. "I can't sleep either." The breakdown came without warning. Not loud, not dramatic, just a quiet collapse. A crumbling of the walls she had built to hold back the horror. She sank to the floor, her back against the wall, her arms wrapped around her swollen belly. The tears fell silently, hot, endless. "I let him into my body, my home, my family. I loved him. I trusted him. I was going to raise a child with him. And he tried to kill us both." The sobs shook her entire frame. Her broken ribs screamed in protest, but she couldn't stop, couldn't hold it in anymore. All those years, all those lies, all those moments when she had doubted herself, when she had believed his explanations, when she had made excuses for his cruelty because it was easier than facing the truth. She had been married to a murderer, had shared a bed with a monster, had planned a future with a man who had killed 5 women before her. How did I not see it? How did I not know? The door opened, footsteps, then a presence beside her. Bridget, her best friend, the one person who had never liked Preston, who had tried to warn her, who had been pushed away when Vivi chose her husband over everyone else. Bridget didn't speak, just sat down on the floor next to her. Shoulder to shoulder, silent support. After a long time, Bridget said, You know what I keep thinking about? That time Preston complained the coffee was too hot at your wedding brunch, and you actually apologize for coffee you didn't even make. Vivi laughed through her tears, a broken sound. I apologized for everything, the weather, traffic, his moods. I was always apologizing. Never again. Vivi wiped her eyes. Her hand found Bridget's. I survived him. I survived the fall. I'm going to survive the truth of who I married. Bridget squeezed her fingers. Yes, you are. You. The USB drive changed everything. The contents were extensive. 2 decades of documentation. Photos of women Preston had dated, personal information, financial records, and most damning of all, videos. Videos of Chelsea Morrison at the party before her death, Diana Reeves getting into her car, Sarah Crawford at her apartment building. Preston hadn't just killed these women. He had documented them, collected them, kept them as trophies. The FBI forensic team worked around the clock, matching faces to names, connecting dots that had been invisible for 20 years. The USB drive contained more than evidence, Raymond told Vivi during his daily visit. It contained the names of every person the Sterling family paid to look the other way. 3 judges, 2 senators, the police chief who handled Chelsea Morrison's case, half a dozen corporate executives who helped launder the payoff money. Vivi stared at him. How deep does this go? Deep enough to bring down some very powerful people. Raymond sat down beside her. The FBI is opening investigations into 23 separate individuals. This isn't just about Preston anymore. It's about the entire system that enabled him. What about the other families? Chelsea Morrison's parents? Diana Reeves's mother? I've spoken with them. Some are willing to cooperate. Others are scared. They've spent years being told to stay quiet, to accept the money and move on. Raymond paused. But now they have a choice. Now they can finally tell the truth. Vivi thought about those families. The mothers who had lost daughters, the fathers who had buried children, the siblings who had grown up missing someone who should have been there. They deserve justice, she said. They'll get it. Raymond's voice was steel. I promise you that. The grand jury convened on a Tuesday morning. Federal courthouse, downtown Manhattan. Security tighter than anyone could remember. Genevieve Sterling walked through the metal detectors with her father at her side. 8 months pregnant now. Moving slowly, carefully. Every step a reminder of what she had survived. The courtroom was packed. Reporters, attorneys, FBI agents, representatives from victim families who had waited decades for this moment. Vivi took her seat in the witness chair. The court reporter's fingers hovered over her machine. 24 jurors watched from their seats, waiting, listening. Please state your name for the record. Genevieve Ruth Ashford Sterling. Mrs. Sterling, can you tell us about the events of October 15th of this year? Vivi took a deep breath. She had rehearsed this, prepared for every question, but nothing could truly prepare you for reliving the worst night of your life in front of strangers. My husband Preston and I were in the penthouse apartment of Sterling Tower. We had been arguing about a prenatal paternity test I found in his office. He had secretly tested the baby's DNA without my knowledge or consent. What happened next? I confronted him, asked him why he needed proof that the baby was his. He became defensive, aggressive. Vivi paused. Then he pushed me. Where did he push you? Into the elevator shaft. The doors were open. There was nothing below me but a 40-foot drop. A murmur rippled through the courtroom. The jurors' faces shifted from neutral to horrified. What happened after he pushed you? I fell, but I hit a maintenance platform about 12 feet down instead of falling all the way to the bottom. I broke my arm, cracked 3 ribs, suffered internal bleeding. Vivi's hand moved to her belly. But my baby survived. We both did. Did you see your husband's face during or after the fall? Yes, Vivi's voice was steady now, strong. He looked at me while I fell. He watched to make sure I was dead. And when I didn't die immediately, he turned and walked away. He left me there, in the dark, bleeding, alone. One of the jurors, an older woman, had tears streaming down her face. Another juror, a middle-aged man, gripped the armrest of his chair until his knuckles went white. Mrs. Sterling, were you aware of any prior incidents involving your husband and other women? Not at the time. I've since learned that Preston has a history of violence against women. At least 5 other women died under suspicious circumstances while involved with him. Chelsea Morrison, Diana Reeves, Catherine Wells, Sarah Crawford, Rebecca Palmer. Vivi looked directly at the jurors. I would have been number 6. Preston Sterling held his own press conference that afternoon, standing on the courthouse steps, flanked by his new legal team, cameras flashing, microphones thrust toward his face. My wife is unwell, Preston said. His voice was smooth, practiced. The same charm that had fooled Vivi for years. The pregnancy has been difficult. The hormonal changes have affected her judgment, her memory. He paused for effect, blinked away what might have been tears. I love her. I would never harm her or our child. These accusations are baseless. I'm confident that the truth will come out. A reporter shouted from the crowd, What about Chelsea Morrison? Preston's smile didn't waver. I don't know anyone by that name. What about Diana Reeves? A tragic accident. I was devastated by her loss. What about Sarah Crawford? The smile flickered, just for a moment, just long enough for the cameras to catch. I have no further comment, Preston said. He turned to leave, but another reporter called out, cutting through the noise. Mr. Sterling, the FBI has released footage from the elevator shaft security camera. It clearly shows you pushing your wife. Do you have a response? Preston froze. His mask slipped completely. For one moment, the cameras captured the real Preston Sterling. The empty eyes, the cold calculation, the utter lack of human emotion. Then he was gone, swept away by his lawyers, retreating into the shadows where he had always hidden. But the image remained, broadcast around the world, shared millions of times on social media. The monster had finally been seen. Raymond's final meeting with the federal prosecutors took place that evening. 3 hours of documents, evidence, testimony. We have bank records, Raymond said. Wire transfers, the systematic payments before each death, the bribes to officials who looked the other way. What about physical evidence? The USB drive Celeste Vaughn provided contains videos of at least 3 victims taken within days of their deaths. Forensic analysis confirms the timestamps. Preston Sterling documented his crimes. The lead prosecutor, a woman named Victoria Walsh, studied the evidence. 20 years in the DOJ. She had seen monsters before, but this was different. The racketeering charges alone will put him away for decades, she said. Add the obstruction, the money laundering, the bribery. It's not enough, Raymond leaned forward. This man murdered 5 women, attempted to murder my daughter and grandchild. He needs to spend the rest of his life in a cell, not decades, forever. Walsh nodded slowly. The footage from the elevator shaft is compelling. Combined with your daughter's testimony and the pattern evidence, she paused. We can charge him with attempted murder, 1st degree, premeditated. And the other victims? That's trickier. The deaths were ruled accidents or suicides at the time. Reopening those cases will take time. Resources. Walsh met Raymond's gaze. But we'll do it, every single one. I promise you that. Raymond stood, extended his hand. The federal case is just the beginning, he said. I have one more move. And it will cost the Sterling family more than prison time. It will cost them everything they valued most, their legacy. The shareholder meeting took place at the Sterling Corp headquarters, the same building where Preston had tried to murder his wife, the same elevator shaft where Genevieve had fallen. 300 shareholders packed the auditorium. Nervous whispers, uncertain faces. The company's stock had dropped 60% since the scandal broke, millions of dollars in value, evaporating by the hour. Raymond Ashford walked to the podium. He wasn't a shareholder, not officially, but over the past 2 months, working through a network of shell companies and proxy voters, he had quietly acquired 15% of Sterling Corp stock, enough to make his voice heard. Ladies and gentlemen, Raymond began, my name is Raymond Ashford. Some of you know me. Most of you know my reputation. Murmurs from the crowd. The Ashford name carried weight in these circles. 30 years of federal prosecutions, dozens of corrupt executives sent to prison, a legacy of holding the powerful accountable. I'm here today to exercise my rights as a shareholder and to move for a vote of no confidence in the Sterling family leadership. Chaos erupted, shouting, protests, the remaining Sterling board members leaping to their feet. Raymond waited, patient, calm. Given the pending federal indictments, he continued when the noise subsided, the reputational damage and the evidence of systematic criminal behavior, I believe this company needs new management, management that isn't complicit in covering up murder. You can't do this, a board member shouted. The Sterling family built this company. The Sterling family used this company to finance their son's killing spree. Raymond's voice cut through the room like a blade. For 20 years, corporate funds were diverted to pay off victims' families, to bribe officials, to silence witnesses. Every shareholder in this room has been complicit in that enterprise, knowingly or not. The room went silent. I'm offering you a choice, Raymond said. Vote with me. Remove the Sterling family from leadership. Begin the process of making this company something other than a monument to murder. He paused. Or don't, and watch your investment become worthless when the full scope of criminal liability becomes public. The vote was called. The ballots were cast. When the counting was done, Raymond had won by a margin of 63%. The Sterling family was out. Their name would remain on the building, but their power was gone. Their legacy destroyed. Everything they had built for 4 generations brought down by one man's quest for justice. Preston Sterling's arrest happened the next morning. FBI agents waited outside his attorney's office. No warning, no negotiation. Just handcuffs and a perp walk in front of 50 cameras. Preston's face showed nothing as they led him to the car. No fear, no anger, no remorse. Just the emptiness that had always been there. Hidden behind the charm, behind the smile, behind the carefully constructed mask of humanity. Margot Sterling watched from her townhouse window, her assets frozen, her phone confiscated, her world collapsing around her. The Sterling name that had commanded respect for 4 generations was now synonymous with monster. The civil suits came next. The family of Chelsea Morrison, parents who had spent 16 years being told their daughter killed herself, who had accepted money to stay quiet, who had lived with the knowledge that justice would never come. The family of Diana Reeves, a mother who had buried her child and never understood why, who had questioned the police findings, who had been threatened into silence by Sterling lawyers. The family of Sarah Crawford, a sister who had known her sibling didn't use drugs, who had fought for years to reopen the investigation, who had finally been heard. 20 years of silence broken, 20 years of grief finally acknowledged. The Sterling fortune that had built hospitals and endowed universities would now pay restitution to the families they had destroyed. Vivi received the news at the safe house. Her father called, his voice tired but triumphant. It's done, Raymond said. Preston will be arraigned tomorrow. The charges are attempted murder, racketeering, money laundering, obstruction of justice. The prosecutors are confident. The evidence is overwhelming. Vivi sat down slowly, her hand on her belly. The baby was quiet now, resting. What about his mother? Margot's trial is scheduled for next month. Conspiracy, ordering a hit on you. 20 years of obstruction. Raymond paused. She'll die in prison, Genevieve. They both will. The tears came, but these were different. Not tears of pain, not tears of fear, tears of release, of closure, of the long nightmare finally ending. Thank you, Dad. Don't thank me. Raymond's voice softened. You survived. You testified. You found the courage to tell the truth when it would have been so much easier to stay silent. A pause. I'm proud of you, sweetheart. So proud. Vivi wiped her eyes. I couldn't have done it without you. Yes, you could have. You were always stronger than you knew. Raymond cleared his throat. Now get some rest. You have a baby to deliver, and a whole new life to begin. The contractions started at 3:17 in the morning. Vivi had been dreaming. Not the nightmares that had plagued her for months. Not the falling, not the darkness, not Preston's face watching her plummet into the void. Something different. Something peaceful. A garden. sunlight streaming through apple trees, a little girl with dark hair running through wildflowers, laughing, free, safe. Then the pain, sharp, urgent, unmistakable, like a fist clenching inside her belly. Vivi's eyes flew open. The safe house bedroom was dark, silent except for the distant hum of the security system. Another contraction, stronger this time, radiating from her lower back to her abdomen like a wave of fire. "It's time," she whispered to the empty room. "Oh God, it's time." Her hands found her belly. 8 months and 3 weeks. Early, but not dangerously so. The doctors had warned her this might happen. The trauma of the fall, the stress of the trial. The body sometimes decides it's had enough. She reached for her phone. Speed dial 1, her father. "Dad," her voice was steady, calmer than she felt. "The baby's coming." Raymond Ashford had faced down murderers, testified before Congress, prosecuted men who had threatened to destroy him and everyone he loved. But the sound of his daughter's voice telling him his grandchild was on the way reduced him to something approaching panic. "I'm on my way, 20 minutes, don't move. I'm calling the hospital. I'm calling Teddy. I am calling Bridget. Don't move." "Dad." "What?" "Breathe." A pause, then a laugh, shaky but genuine. "That's supposed to be my line." "I know. I learned from the best." The drive to Mount Sinai took 43 minutes. Raymond broke every speed limit. Teddy sat in the passenger seat calling ahead to the hospital. Bridget had beaten them all, somehow arriving before the ambulance that transported Vivi from the safe house. The private maternity wing had been secured days earlier. Armed guards at every entrance. No press, no cameras, no one without explicit clearance. This moment belonged to Vivi and her family. After everything they had endured, they had earned that privacy. The labor room was state-of-the-art. Soft lighting that could be adjusted. A sound system playing gentle music. Medical equipment disguised behind warm wood panels. Everything designed to feel less clinical, more human. Vivi lay in the bed, hooked to monitors that tracked her contractions and the baby's heartbeat. The rhythmic beeping was strangely comforting, proof that Ruth was still fighting, still strong. Bridget held her hand through the first wave of serious contractions, the kind that made Vivi grip the bed rails until her knuckles went white. "Breathe," Bridget said. "In through the bellies, out through the mouth, just like we practiced." "We never practiced." "Then improvise. You're good at that." Vivi laughed despite the pain. Leave it to Bridget to make her laugh during labor. "How bad is it?" Bridget asked. "Remember when you convinced me to try hot yoga and I passed out in downward dog?" "That bad?" "Multiply by 1,000. So we're never doing hot yoga again. We're never doing anything again. I'm never moving from this bed." Another contraction. Vivi's grip tightened. The monitors beeped faster. "You're doing great," the nurse said. 7 centimeters dilated. "A few more hours." A few more hours. Vivi closed her eyes. She could do this. She had survived Preston Sterling. She had survived the fall. She had survived 6 months of investigations and testimonies and having her entire life dissected by strangers. She could survive childbirth. The hours stretched like taffy. Time lost all meaning. There was only the pain, the pressure, the relentless march towards something inevitable. Raymond paced in the waiting room, back and forth, wearing a path in the expensive carpet. Teddy tried to distract him, showed him funny videos on his phone, talked about the tech company he was building. Anything to fill the silence. "Dad, sit down. You're making me dizzy." "I can't sit. I've been sitting for 6 months. Sitting in courtrooms, sitting in meetings, sitting across from lawyers and prosecutors and FBI agents." Raymond ran his hands through his gray hair. "I need to move. I need to do something." "There's nothing to do. She's in good hands. The doctors are the best. The security is tight. Everything is under control." "Nothing is under control." Raymond stopped pacing, looked at his son. "When your mother was in labor with you, I thought I knew what fear was. I thought I understood what it meant to be helpless. But this," he shook his head, "after everything Genevieve has been through, everything that monster put her through, and now she has to do this, alone." "She's not alone. Bridget is with her." That's not what I mean. Raymond sat down heavily. I mean without a partner, without someone who loves her the way she deserves to be loved. She's bringing a child into the world, and the father of that child tried to kill them both. Teddy was quiet for a moment. Then he reached over and put his hand on his father's shoulder. She has us, he said. She has you. She has me. She has Bridget and the whole extended family and everyone who's been fighting for her since this started. He paused. Ruth isn't going to grow up without love, Dad. She's going to grow up with more love than she knows what to do with. Raymond looked at his son, this young man who had grown up while Raymond was consumed with work, with cases, with putting away the bad guys while his own family sometimes felt like an afterthought. When did you get so wise? I had a good teacher. Teddy smiled. Even if he wasn't always around. I'm sorry for all the times I wasn't there. You're here now, that's what matters. The waiting room door opened. A nurse appeared. Mr. Ashford, there's been a complication. The word complication echoed through Raymond's skull as he followed the nurse down the corridor. Complication, such a clinical word, such a sanitized way of saying something has gone wrong. The delivery room was controlled chaos, doctors and nurses moving with urgent efficiency, monitors beeping with increased frequency. Vivi's face pale against the white sheets. What's happening? Raymond demanded. Dr. Weaver met him at the door. Her expression was serious but not panicked. Professional concern rather than alarm. The internal scarring from the fall is affecting the birth canal, she explained. The baby is presenting in a difficult position. We need to perform an emergency cesarean section. Is she going to be okay? Is the baby going to be okay? We're going to do everything we can. Dr. Weaver's hand touched his arm. A rare gesture of personal connection from the typically clinical physician. Your daughter is strong, Mr. Ashford. She's fought through worse than this. Raymond looked past her. Through the doorway, he could see Vivi on the bed, her face contorted with pain, but her eyes were clear, focused, determined. She caught his gaze, managed a small smile. I've got this, Dad. He nodded, unable to speak, unable to do anything but watch as they wheeled her toward the operating room. The cesarean section took 47 minutes. 47 minutes of silence in the waiting room. Teddy and Raymond sitting side by side, not speaking, not moving, just waiting. Bridget had been allowed to stay with Vivi, holding her hand through the procedure, talking to her in low tones about nothing and everything, keeping her grounded, keeping her present. The anesthesia had taken effect quickly. Vivi was awake but numb from the chest down. She could feel pressure but not pain, could sense movement but not the cutting. You're doing great, the anesthesiologist said. Just a few more minutes. Vivi stared at the ceiling. The surgical lights were bright, almost harsh, but she didn't close her eyes. She wanted to be present for every moment. This was the birth of her daughter. The beginning of Ruth's story. No matter how it happened, she wanted to remember. Almost there, Dr. Weaver said from behind the surgical curtain. I can see her head. She has a lot of hair. Her daughter had hair. Such a small detail. Such an enormous thing. Okay, Genevieve. One more minute. You're going to feel some pressure. The pressure came, strange and uncomfortable, but not painful, like something being pulled from deep inside her. And then, a creaky, all at first, then growing, louder, stronger, the sound of life announcing itself to the world. She's here, Dr. Weaver said. She's beautiful. They lifted Ruth above the curtain so Vivi could see. Red and wrinkled and covered in fluid, tiny fists clenched, mouth open in that eternal newborn scream, the most beautiful thing Vivi had ever seen. Ruth, she whispered. My Ruth. 6 pounds, 2 ounces, 19 inches long. Perfect APGAR scores, 10 fingers, 10 toes, a full head of dark hair that would later dry into soft curls. The nurses cleaned her, wrapped her in a pink blanket, placed her in Vivi's arms. The first moment of contact was electric. Skin against skin, heartbeat against heartbeat. 2 lives that had been one for 8 months, now separate but forever connected. Ruth's eyes were closed, her face scrunched in that newborn confusion of too much light, Too much sound, too much everything. But she wasn't crying anymore. She was listening, feeling, recognizing the heartbeat she had heard from inside the womb. "Hello, beautiful," Vivi whispered. "I've been waiting for you." The baby made a small sound, not quite a cry, not quite a coo, something in between, a response, an acknowledgement. "I know," Vivi said. "It's bright out here and loud and scary. But I promise you, it's also wonderful. There's so much I want to show you, so much I want you to see." Ruth's eyes fluttered open, unfocused, unable to see clearly yet, but somehow finding her mother's face, somehow knowing. "You have my eyes," Vivi said. The tears came then, hot and uncontrollable, but not sad, not afraid, just overwhelmed with a love so intense it felt like drowning. "You have my eyes, Ruth, not his, mine." Such a small thing, such an enormous mercy. Raymond was allowed in 30 minutes later. He stood in the doorway of the recovery room, suddenly uncertain. This man who had faced down the worst humanity had to offer, rendered speechless by a 6-pound infant. "Come meet your granddaughter," Vivi said. He approached slowly, reverently, as if the baby might shatter if he moved too quickly. Vivi transferred Ruth into his arms. The transfer was awkward, neither of them quite sure of the mechanics. But then she was there, cradled against his chest. So small, so fragile, so absolutely perfect. Raymond looked down at his granddaughter. Something shifted in his face. The prosecutor disappeared. The strategist. The warrior who had spent 6 months dismantling an empire. In his place was just a man, a grandfather, holding the future in his arms. "She looks like you did," he said. His voice was rough, unsteady. "When you were born, same nose, same chin, same expression like she's already judging everyone in the room." Vivi laughed. "She probably is. Smart girl." Raymond couldn't stop staring. "You know, when you were born, I made a promise. I told your mother I would protect you, keep you safe, make sure nothing bad ever happened to you." His voice cracked. "I failed. I let you marry that monster. I didn't see what he was until it was almost too late." "Dad, let me finish." He looked up, met her eyes. "I failed to protect you, but I won't fail her. I swear to you, Genevieve, I will spend every day of whatever time I have left making sure this little girl knows she is loved, that she is safe, that she has a family who will burn the world down before they let anyone hurt her." Vivi reached for his hand. "You didn't fail me, Dad. You saved me. You saved both of us. We saved each other." Ruth made a sound, a small gurgle of contentment, as if agreeing with the sentiment. Raymond laughed, a real laugh. "The first one in months. She's already weighing in. Definitely your daughter." The visitors came in waves over the next few days. Teddy brought flowers and a stuffed elephant that was bigger than the baby. Bridget brought designer onesies and a promise to be the cool aunt who let Ruth get away with everything. Dr. Weaver checked in twice a day, marveling at how quickly both mother and daughter were recovering. But the most unexpected visitor came on the third day. Vivi was alone in her room, Ruth sleeping in the bassinet beside her bed, the afternoon sun streaming through the windows. A knock at the door. Celeste Vaughan stood in the hallway, uncertain, out of place, clutching a small gift bag like a shield. "I shouldn't be here," she said, the same words she had spoken at the safe house months ago. "But I wanted. Come in." Celeste approached the bassinet slowly. Her eyes found Ruth. The baby was awake now, staring at this stranger with the intense focus that newborns sometimes display. "She's beautiful," Celeste whispered. "Thank you." "I brought something." Celeste held out the gift bag. "It's probably stupid. I didn't know what to get. I've never—" She stopped, started again. "I've never done this before. Visited someone I helped destroy. Someone who should hate me." Vivi took the bag. Inside was a small silver rattle, simple, elegant, a dove engraved on the handle. "For peace," Celeste explained. "I know it doesn't make up for anything. I know I can't undo what I did, what I was part of." She was crying now, quietly. "But I wanted her to have something, from someone who understands what her mother survived, who's trying to be better than what she was." Vivi looked at the rattle, then at Celeste, This woman who had been her replacement, her rival, the other woman in every sense of the phrase, but also a victim, another person manipulated by Preston Sterling, another life nearly destroyed by his cruelty. "Sit down," Vivi said. Celeste hesitated, then sat in the chair beside the bed. "I'm testifying next month," she said. "The federal prosecutors. They want to know everything, every conversation, every lie he told, every moment I spent pretending not to see what he really was." "Are you scared?" "Terrified." Celeste laughed bitterly. "The Sterling lawyers have already started. Leaked stories about my past, my relationships, anything to discredit me before I take the stand. They tried that with me, too. How do you deal with it?" Vivi considered the question. How did she deal with it? The exposure, the judgment, the strangers on the internet dissecting her life and finding her wanting. "I focus on what matters," she finally said. "Ruth, my family, the truth." She paused. "Everything else is noise." Celeste nodded slowly. "I envy you, that clarity, that certainty." She looked at Ruth. "Maybe that's what motherhood does. Gives you something bigger than yourself to fight for." "Maybe?" Vivi shifted in the bed. "Or maybe it's what surviving does. Strips away everything that doesn't matter until you're left with what does." They sat in silence for a moment. Two women connected by the worst person they had ever known, finding something like understanding in the space between. "I should go," Celeste said. "You need rest, and I've taken enough of your time." She stood, walked to the door, paused. "Thank you," she said, "for not hating me, for letting me see her." A pause, "For showing me that it's possible to come out the other side of something like this and still be human." Vivi watched her go, then looked at Ruth. The baby was watching too, those unfocused newborn eyes somehow seeing everything. "That was complicated," Vivi told her daughter. "Life is going to be full of complicated things. People who hurt you, people who help you. Sometimes the same person doing both." Ruth blinked. "The trick," Vivi continued, "is figuring out which is which, and having the courage to forgive when forgiveness is deserved." The baby yawned. Apparently philosophical discussions were exhausting. "Fair point," Vivi said. "We'll save the rest for when you're older." The verdict came down on a Tuesday, 6 months after Ruth's birth, 6 months of motions and hearings and legal maneuvering. 6 months of the Sterling defense team throwing everything they had at the prosecution's case. None of it worked. The evidence was overwhelming. The elevator footage, the financial records, the testimonies of Celeste Vaughn and dozens of others who had finally found the courage to speak. Preston Sterling III, guilty on all counts. Attempted murder in the first degree, premeditated, conspiracy to commit murder, racketeering, money laundering, obstruction of justice, bribery of public officials. Sentence: life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. Margot Sterling's trial had concluded a month earlier. The matriarch of the Sterling dynasty, the woman who had protected her son's secrets for 20 years, who had ordered a hit on her own daughter-in-law, guilty of conspiracy to commit murder, guilty of obstruction of justice, guilty of witness tampering. 25 years in federal prison. She would die behind bars. Vivi watched the verdict announcement from her living room. Ruth in her arms, the television on mute. She didn't need to hear the words. She could see them on the faces of the reporters, the prosecutors, the families of the victims who had waited decades for this moment. Justice. Not perfect justice. Nothing could bring back Chelsea Morrison or Diana Reeves or Catherine Wells or Sarah Crawford or Rebecca Palmer. Nothing could erase the years of silence, the years of fear, the years of wondering if anyone would ever believe them. But this was something, an acknowledgement, a reckoning. A line drawn in the sand that said, "No more." Raymond called moments after the verdict. "It's done," he said. "It's finally done." Vivi looked at her daughter, 6 months old, growing so fast, already trying to grab everything within reach. "No," she said, "it's just beginning." The courthouse steps were crowded with cameras and reporters and onlookers. The verdict had drawn international attention. The fall of a dynasty, the triumph of truth over wealth and power. Vivi walked through the chaos with Ruth in her arms. Security flanked her on all sides. But she didn't hurry, didn't hide. Let them see. Let them photograph. Let them witness what survival looked like. A reporter shouted a question. "Mrs. Sterling, how do you feel about the verdict?" She paused, turned toward the cameras. Ruth was awake, looking at the crowd with wide eyes, taking in this strange new world of flashing lights and shouting voices. Vivi smiled, not triumphant, not vindictive, something quieter, something stronger. Peace. "My name," she said clearly, "is Genevieve Ashford, and I feel like the rest of my life just started." Then she walked down the steps, into the waiting car, away from the past and toward everything that came next. 2 years later, the house sat on 3 acres of Connecticut countryside, a white Cape Cod with blue shutters, a wraparound porch with rocking chairs, a garden that bloomed with flowers from April to October. Nothing like Sterling Tower. Nothing like the penthouse prison where Vivi had spent 3 years of her life pretending to be happy. This was real. This was hers. This was home. Ruth's laughter echoed across the backyard. 2 years old now, running on sturdy legs that had learned to walk at 10 months and hadn't stopped moving since. She was chasing butterflies, her dark curls bouncing, her arms outstretched toward creatures that always stayed just out of reach. Vivi watched from the kitchen window, coffee in hand, morning light streaming through clean glass. Every morning started like this, the quiet moment before the day began, when she could simply watch her daughter exist in the world, safe, happy, free. The nightmares had stopped about a year ago, the falling dreams, the darkness, Preston's face floating above her in the elevator shaft. Therapy had helped, time had helped, but mostly Ruth had helped. Hard to dwell in the past when the present demanded so much attention. The doorbell rang. Vivi crossed to the front door, already knowing who it was. Her father had a key, but always rang anyway. Old-fashioned courtesy. Raymond Ashford stood on the porch, a stuffed giraffe under one arm, a bakery box in his hands. "Grandpa!" Ruth had somehow heard the bell from the backyard, come racing around the house, launched herself at Raymond's legs with the full force of toddler enthusiasm. He laughed, set down the bakery box, scooped her up with an ease that belied his 63 years. "There's my favorite girl. I'm chasing butterflies. Did you catch any?" "No, they're too fast." "That's okay. The best things in life are worth chasing, even if you never catch them." Ruth considered this wisdom with the gravity only a 2-year-old could muster, then squirmed to be put down. "Come see my garden." She grabbed his hand, pulled him toward the backyard. Raymond shot Vivi a helpless look over his shoulder. "Coffee's on the counter," she called after him. "I'll bring it out." The garden had been Ruth's project, or at least she had helped plant seeds in the spring. Watched them grow all summer, taken personal credit for every flower that bloomed. Raymond let her give the full tour, nodding seriously at each discovery, asking questions about colors and names and which flowers were her favorites. Vivi brought coffee and joined them on the patio. The morning was warm but not hot, a perfect September day. "You know," Raymond said, settling into one of the rocking chairs, "when you were little you had a garden too. Nothing this impressive, but you were proud of it." "I don't remember." "You were 3. We had just moved to the house in Westchester. Your mother planted tomatoes, and you decided they were yours, watered them every day, talked to them." He smiled at the memory. "When they finally produced fruit, you were so proud. Made us eat them at every meal for a month." Vivi tried to summon the memory. It was there somewhere, buried under decades of other moments. "I miss her," she said. "Mom, I wish she could have met Ruth. She would have loved her." Raymond watched his granddaughter dig in the dirt with focused determination. "She would have loved all of this, what you've built, who you've become." "Who I've become," Vivi laughed softly. "Some days I'm not sure who that is." "You're a survivor, a mother, a voice for people who didn't have one." Raymond turned to face her. "Do you know how many families you've helped? Not just the Sterling victims. Others, people who saw your testimony and found the courage to come forward about their own situations." Vivi had heard the stories, the letters that arrived at her attorney's office, the messages on the foundation's website. Women who had watched her testimony and recognized their own lives, who had found the strength to leave, to speak, to fight. I just told the truth. The truth is the most powerful weapon there is. I spent 30 years learning that. Raymond sipped his coffee. Speaking of which, I got a call yesterday from the Department of Justice. About? They're reopening the cold cases. All five of them. Chelsea Morrison, Diana Reeves, Catherine Wells, Sarah Crawford, Rebecca Palmer. He paused. The forensic technology has advanced. Combined with the financial evidence, they think they can upgrade the charges. Murder in the first degree. For all of them. Vivi processed this information. More trials, more testimony, more reliving of the nightmare she had escaped, but also more justice. More closure for families who had waited even longer than she had. What do you need from me? Nothing yet, but they may want you to testify again about the pattern, about what you observed during your marriage. Raymond reached for her hand. You don't have to. You've done enough. More than enough. I'll do it. The words came without hesitation. Those families deserve the same thing I got. A verdict, an acknowledgement that what happened to their daughters wasn't an accident, wasn't suicide, wasn't anything other than what it was. Murder. Murder. Vivi nodded. And if my testimony helps prove that, then I'll testify as many times as they need. Raymond squeezed her hand. Your mother would be so proud. The Survivors Advocacy Foundation had been Vivi's idea, a way to channel everything she had experienced into something constructive. The Ashford Foundation for Domestic Violence Survivors, funded initially by a portion of Vivi's divorce settlement, grown through donations from people touched by her story. The office was in downtown Hartford. Nothing fancy, a converted warehouse space with exposed brick and big windows, desks for the staff, meeting rooms for support groups, a crisis hotline that operated 24 hours a day. Vivi visited once a week, more when she could manage it. Today she brought Ruth. This is where Mommy works, she explained as they walked through the front door. Ruth looked around with wide eyes. The office was buzzing with activity, phones ringing, people typing, conversations happening in every corner. It's loud, Ruth observed. Yes, because lots of people need help, and these are the people who help them. A woman approached, Sarah Chen, the foundation's executive director. Brilliant, compassionate, a survivor herself, though her story was her own to tell. Genevieve, and this must be Ruth. Sarah crouched down to Ruth's level. I've heard so much about you. Your mommy says you're the best helper in the world. Ruth considered this. I help with the garden. That's very important work. Flowers need water. They certainly do. Sarah stood. We have some new volunteers starting today. Would you like to say a few words? Nothing formal. Just welcome them. Let them know what they're part of. Vivi nodded. She had done this before, found that she was good at it, though public speaking had never been her strength. But talking about this, about survival, about hope, that was different. That came from somewhere deeper than skill. The conference room held about 20 people, new volunteers, some eager, some nervous, all committed to making a difference. Vivi stood at the front of the room, Ruth in a chair beside her, coloring in a book someone had provided. Thank you for being here, Vivi began. I know you all have other things you could be doing, jobs, families, lives that don't include spending your free time helping strangers through the worst moments of theirs. She paused, let the words settle. But you chose this. You chose to be here. And that choice matters more than you know. A young woman in the front row was crying quietly. Vivi recognized the signs. A survivor, probably recent, finding her way back to solid ground. When I was thrown down that elevator shaft, I thought my story was ending. I thought everything I had worked for, dreamed about, hoped for was gone. In a single moment, the man I loved tried to erase me from existence. The room was silent. Even Ruth had stopped coloring. But I survived, not because I was strong, not because I was special. I survived because I wasn't alone, because I had people who believed me when I told the truth, people who fought for me when I was too broken to fight for myself. She looked at each face in the room. That's what you're doing here. You're becoming that person for someone else, The one who believes, the one who fights, the one who says, I see you, I believe you, you're not alone. The young woman in the front row raised her hand. How do you know what to say when someone tells you their story? Vivi considered the question. You don't need to know exactly what to say. You just need to listen, really listen. Not to respond, not to fix, just to witness. She paused. Most survivors have spent so long being told their experiences didn't matter, that they were exaggerating, that they were wrong. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is, I believe you. The session continued. Questions and answers. Practical information about resources and protocols. But Vivi kept coming back to that core truth. I believe you. 3 words that had saved her life. The afternoon brought an unexpected visitor. Vivi was in her office reviewing grant applications when Sarah knocked on the door. There's someone here to see you. Says her name is Margaret Morrison. Morrison. Vivi's heart clenched. Chelsea Morrison's mother? Sarah nodded. Should I tell her you're busy? Vivi took a breath. No, send her in. Margaret Morrison was in her 60s, silver hair, tired eyes that had seen too much sorrow. She entered the office slowly, hesitantly, as if unsure she belonged. Mrs. Ashford, thank you for seeing me. Please call me Genevieve and sit down. Margaret lowered herself into the chair across from Vivi's desk, her hands twisted in her lap. I wasn't sure I should come. We've never met. And what I have to say, it's been 16 years. 16 years of silence, of taking their money and pretending my daughter killed herself. Vivi waited. Let the woman speak at her own pace. Chelsea didn't kill herself. Margaret's voice cracked. She was happy, in love, planning her future. She had just declared her major, talked about law school, about making a difference. I know, Vivi said. I've read her file. Then you know what he did, what they all helped him cover up. Margaret wiped her eyes. I knew, I've always known, but I was scared. They threatened us, said they would destroy my husband's business, take our house, make our lives impossible. The Sterlings were good at threats. They were good at following through. Margaret laughed bitterly. So we took the money, signed the papers, kept quiet while our daughter's killer walked free, dated other women, married you. She looked at Vivi with something like wonder. And you survived. You were the one who finally stopped him. Vivi shook her head. I wasn't the one. There were dozens of people, investigators, prosecutors, other survivors who came forward. But you were first. You were the one who had the courage to tell the truth when everyone else was still afraid. Margaret reached into her purse, pulled out a photograph, handed it across the desk. Chelsea Morrison at 18, dark hair, bright smile, so young, so full of promise. She would have been your age now, Margaret said. 32, probably married, maybe with children of her own. A pause. I wonder sometimes what her life would have been, who she would have become. Vivi looked at the photograph, this girl she had never met, this woman she was connected to through tragedy. I'm so sorry, she said. I'm so sorry for what you've lost, what you've endured. I didn't come here for sympathy. Margaret straightened in her chair. I came to tell you something I've never said to anyone. What is it? Thank you. The words were simple, profound. Thank you for surviving. Thank you for speaking. Thank you for being brave enough to do what my family wasn't. Tears streamed down her face. Because of you, the world finally knows what happened to my daughter. Because of you, her death wasn't meaningless. Vivi came around the desk, knelt beside Margaret's chair, took the older woman's hands in her own. It was never meaningless. Chelsea's life mattered. Her death mattered. Even when no one else acknowledged it, you knew the truth. You carried it for 16 years. That's not weakness. That's strength. They stayed like that for a long moment. 2 women bound by the same monster, finding something like peace in each other's presence. Evening came slowly to the Connecticut countryside. The sun painted the sky in shades of orange and pink and gold. Ruth had exhausted herself at the foundation, fallen asleep in the car on the way home, was now tucked into bed, clutching the stuffed elephant Teddy had given her at birth. Vivi stood on the back porch, a glass of wine in her hand, the first she had allowed herself since the pregnancy. The garden was beautiful in the fading light. The flowers closed for the night. The butterflies Ruth loved so much settled somewhere unseen. She thought about the day, the new volunteers with their eager faces, Margaret Morrison, with her 16 years of grief, the photograph of Chelsea that Vivi had asked to keep. So much pain, so much loss, so much endurance in the face of impossible circumstances. And yet, life continued. Flowers bloomed, children laughed, survivors found their voices, families found their closure. The darkness Preston Sterling had created was being pushed back, day by day, testimony by testimony. One act of courage at a time. The doorbell rang. Bridget stood on the porch, holding a bottle of champagne and grinning like she had a secret. Okay, before you say anything, yes, I know you have work tomorrow, and yes, I know Ruth is asleep, but this can't wait. What can't wait? Bridget thrust her phone at Vivi. A news article. Breaking story. Sterling Corp assets to fund victims' compensation program. The headline was followed by details. The federal court had approved the distribution of seized Sterling assets. Over $200 million would go to the families of Preston's victims. Another $100 million to establish a permanent fund for domestic violence survivors. This is your father's doing, Bridget said. The man is a legend. He didn't just put them away. He made sure their money went to the people they hurt. Vivi read the article, then read it again. The numbers were staggering. The impact would be generational. I didn't know about this. He wanted to surprise you, made me promise not to say anything until it was official. Bridget popped the champagne. So, we're celebrating, even if it's just one glass, even if you have to be responsible tomorrow. Tonight, we acknowledge that the good guys won. They sat on the porch, watching the stars emerge, drinking champagne that probably cost more than Vivi wanted to know. How do you feel? Bridget asked. Vivi considered the question. How did she feel? Like it's really over. Like I can finally stop waiting for the other shoe to drop. That's called peace. I've heard it's nice. It is. Vivi smiled. It really is. The speaking engagement was Vivi's biggest yet. A national conference on survivor advocacy. 3,000 people in the audience. Another 100,000 watching the live stream. She had prepared her remarks, rehearsed them, made sure every word landed exactly where it needed to. But when she stepped to the podium and looked out at the sea of faces, she set her notes aside. I had a speech prepared, she said. Statistics about domestic violence, policy recommendations. All very important, all very necessary. She paused. But you didn't come here for statistics. You came here for the same reason I did. Because you know that behind every number is a person, a story, a life that was changed forever by violence. The audience was silent, thousands of people holding their breath. 3 years ago, I was thrown down an elevator shaft by my husband. I was 7 months pregnant. He expected me to die, expected to erase me the way he had erased 5 women before me. She let that sink in. I survived, not through any special strength of my own. I survived because I landed on a platform instead of falling all the way down. Because a maintenance worker found me 6 hours later. Because doctors worked through the night to save my life and my daughter's. A woman in the front row was crying. A man beside her had his arm around her shoulders. People asked me how I moved on, how I found peace, how I rebuilt my life after everything was destroyed. Vivi took a breath. I tell them, I didn't move on. I moved through. There's no shortcut past the pain, no bypass around the trauma. You have to walk the whole path, feel every terrible step. Let the grief wash over you until there's nothing left but you. She looked at the faces before her. Survivors, advocates, people who had dedicated their lives to helping others through the darkness. But here's what I know now. The path has an end. And on the other side of it, you meet yourself. The version of you that survived everything designed to break you, everything meant to erase you. She smiled. And she's someone worth meeting. Standing ovation, 3,000 people on their feet, applauding, crying, holding each other. The sound washed over Vivi like a wave. Not triumph, not vindication, something simpler. Hope. The final scene of Vivi's story wasn't dramatic, wasn't profound, was just a morning like any other. Ruth woke early, demanded pancakes, Got syrup on her face and in her hair and somehow on the ceiling. Bridget came by with coffee and gossip about the preschool parent drama. Raymond called to check in, to talk about Ruth's upcoming birthday party, to remind Vivi how much he loved her. Teddy texted a picture of himself at some tech conference, looking successful, looking happy, looking nothing like the worried young man who had paced the hospital waiting room while his niece was being born. The foundation sent updates, new volunteers trained, new families helped, new lives saved. Margaret Morrison sent flowers. A standing order. Every week since their meeting, a reminder that grief and gratitude could coexist. And Ruth. Ruth played in her garden, chased butterflies she would never catch, laughed at jokes only she understood, grew taller every day, more confident, more herself. Vivi watched her daughter from the kitchen window, coffee in hand, morning light streaming through clean glass. This was her life now. Not the sterling penthouse, not the charity galas, not the crystal and marble and careful performances. Just this, a messy kitchen, a sticky toddler, a family that had been forged in fire and come out stronger. Ruth looked up, caught her mother watching, waved with both hands. "Mommy, come see." Vivi set down her coffee, walked out to the garden. Let her daughter show her the latest butterfly, the newest flower, the small wonders that made up a child's world. "It's beautiful," she said. "I know." Ruth's confidence was absolute, the certainty of someone who had never been told they weren't enough. Vivi knelt beside her, brushed a curl from her face, felt the fierce love that still surprised her every single day. "You know what the best part is?" she asked. "What?" "That you're here to see it, that we're here together." Ruth considered this with the gravity of a 2-year-old philosopher. "That is good," she agreed, and "Yes," Vivi said, "it really is." Later that evening, after Ruth was asleep and the house was quiet, Vivi returned to the back porch. The stars were out. Millions of them, more than you could ever see from Sterling Tower. She thought about the journey. The 3 years since the fall, the darkness and the light, the despair and the hope, the woman she had been and the woman she had become. He threw me down that shaft expecting me to disappear. Like the others, like all his secrets, like everything inconvenient that stood between him and what he wanted. But I didn't fall into darkness. I fell into the rest of my life, and it's a life he'll never touch. Somewhere in a federal prison, Preston Sterling sat in a cell, his fortune confiscated, his name destroyed, his legacy erased. He would spend every remaining day of his existence staring at concrete walls, knowing that the woman he tried to kill was living, thriving, teaching their daughter to chase butterflies in a garden he would never see. That was justice, not the clean ending of movies and television, not the satisfying conclusion of simple narratives. Real justice. Messy, imperfect, but absolutely undeniably real. Vivi raised her face to the stars. "Thank you," she whispered, "to the universe, to fate, to whatever force had put that maintenance platform in her path, had kept her heart beating through 6 hours of darkness, had given her father the strength to dismantle an empire, had brought Ruth safely into the world. Thank you for the second chance. I won't waste it." The stars didn't answer. They never did. But that was okay. Some things didn't need answers. They just needed acknowledgement. Vivi stood, stretched, took one last look at the garden where her daughter had played. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, new moments to be present for. But tonight there was peace, and that was more than enough. Genevieve fell 40 feet into darkness. She rose 40,000 feet into the light. Some stories end with revenge. This one ended with something better. A daughter who will never know her father's cruelty. A grandfather who proved that justice still exists. A woman who transformed her pain into power for thousands of other survivors. If this story touched your heart, do me a small favor. Hit that subscribe button so you never miss another story like this one. Leave a comment telling me which moment hit you the hardest. I read every single one. And if you know someone who needs to hear that survival is possible, share this with them, because sometimes the right story at the right time can change everything. Until next time, stay strong, stay hopeful, and never stop fighting.